At her mother's funeral, a stranger handed her a worn-out novel. "She wanted you to have this," he whispered. Inside, the margins bled ink notes, underlines, pleas for forgiveness, all in her mother's handwriting. But here's the catch: her mother died 3 years ago. That edition of the book hadn't been printed since the 90s. Page by page, the messages grew darker. Dates matched recent events. Places she hadn't told anyone she was going. The final note: "He knows. Run." Suddenly, the funeral wasn't just a goodbye, it was a warning. Gives watch till the end. Her mother's death wasn't the end of the story, it was the beginning. Grief is the echo of unfinished words. When she was 7, her mother forgot her at a gas station. By the time she turned back, the girl had counted every cigarette butt in the lot. 31. She still remembers. The cracked concrete, the oil-slick rainbow in a puddle. The feeling of being left behind, never quite rinsed out of her. Rain tapped on the coffin like a watch ticking down. Slow, precise, like time itself had come to collect. Black umbrellas bloomed like wilted flowers across the cemetery, and even the trees seemed to lean in with pity. Her hands stayed locked at her sides. Not clenched, not cold, just waiting for something to break. She watched them lower her aunt's body into the dirt. Another loss layered like silt over the one she never spoke of. Her mother's absence still echoed. 3 years, and the silence of it still thundered. She never cried at funerals anymore. She didn't trust herself to know who the tears were really for. Then she saw him at the edge of the crowd. Not mourning, not even pretending. A man in a charcoal coat, worn at the cuffs, with a face she didn't recognize, but something about the shape of him made her ribs tighten. He stood too still, as if waiting for a cue. When the last prayer drifted off into the soil, he stepped forward. He didn't offer condolences. Just pressed a book into her palm. Small, leather-bound, frayed at the spine. His fingers brushed hers like a whisper that shouldn't be heard. "She wanted you to have this," he said. Voice low, not kind, not cruel, but tired, like someone who'd been running from something far longer than they should. She opened her mouth to ask, what? Who was he? What did he mean, she? But he was already turning, already walking away like someone who knew staying would ruin something fragile. The book felt heavier than it looked. Later, in the attic room she hadn't set foot in since before the fire, she turned the lock. She wanted no witnesses. The storm still wept on the shingles above, and the wind pushed gently at the window pane like a hand wanting in. She sat cross-legged on the faded quilt her mother once, embroidered threaded stars and stitched initials now, frayed into ghost shapes. The lamp flickered twice before settling into a weak glow. Then she opened it. The handwriting was hers, her mother's, but it wasn't the elegant loops from birthday cards or the recipes taped to the fridge. These were frantic margins, smudged, urgent. Letters leaned sideways, like they'd been written mid-run. Some notes clawed at the pages beside faded poems and pressed flowers. Not safe, they lied about the house. Check the cellar wall. But her mother had been dead for 3 years. A pressed daisy crumbled to dust between her fingers. He shouldn't have known where to find her. The man. The stranger. She searched her mind, turning memory like a key. Had she seen him at her mother's funeral too? She hadn't looked at many faces then, only the casket. Only the shoes of people saying sorry. One page fluttered loose dog-eared, folded, unfolded. Folded again. A margin in red ink. If he gives you this, it means he changed his mind. Changed his mind about what? Below it, scratched in pencil so faint it was nearly illegible. He'll play kind. He always does. A photo fell from the back cover. A woman laughing, head thrown back, holding a toddler. And behind them, there he was, younger, smiling, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. She stared at that photo until her eyes stung. But the photo hid something worse. Behind his shoulder in the image, a mirror, one she recognized from her childhood bedroom. Only she'd never met him, not ever. Had she? Her heart began to beat wrong, like it skipped and caught on something sharp. The rain paused, like the world held its breath. She pulled her knees to her chest and flipped more pages. The ink changed, softer, steadier, as if her mother had calmed or accepted. A line near the middle read, "He only ever wanted to be seen. That's why he hides so well." And then, tucked in the spine, a dried piece of ribbon. Blue, her baby ribbon, from the hospital. Her full name inked tiny in a nurse's hand. But her mother had told her that was lost. She traced the fray at the edge with her thumb. It had been cut, not torn. Cut clean, like someone had meant to take it. She heard the stairs creak. Just once, silence after. She waited, breath held, then stood. Quiet, barefoot. She slid the ribbon into her pocket and turned off the lamp. Shadows filled the corners like breathless watchers. Her body remembered how to be small, how to move without echo, childhood training. Her mother's voice whispered in her head, "Shadows are safest when no one knows you're watching." She crept to the attic door, ear pressed to the wood. Nothing. She opened it slowly. The hall was empty, but the air had changed. Downstairs, the back door lock clicked softly back into place. He'd been inside. The book still lay open behind her, pages shivering in the breeze. She walked back in, lifted it, and this time, she noticed something buried in the back cover, a flap, sealed shut with wax, pressed with a symbol she didn't know, but felt in her teeth like static. She hesitated, broke the seal. Inside, a page torn from an old receipt, the kind you'd shove in a pocket and forget. On the back, a map, hand-drawn, marked with an X and 2 words beneath, "Our place." She recognized the shape of the creek bend, the cabin, long abandoned, where her mother took her when things got too loud at home. She hadn't been there in over a decade. Why now? She closed the book, held it tight, as if it could bleed answers. If she pressed hard enough. The ribbon pulsed like a secret in her pocket. She looked out the window. The man was there again. Across the street, under the same umbrella, waiting. If justice still matters, you'll want the next page. His face was unreadable in the dark, but he didn't move. Just watch. Her mother's voice again, faint as fog. "He knows. Run." But she didn't run. She reached for her coat, slipped the book beneath the lining. And when she turned back to the window, he was gone. Just an umbrella left open on the sidewalk, filling with rain. The dead don't write, unless they never truly left. In the last week before the morphine swallowed her mother whole, they'd sat on the porch in silence. The wind had turned cold early that year, brushing brittle leaves across their feet. Her mother reached for her hand and whispered, "Promise me, Adira, don't open the attic." Her voice had splintered like old wood. "Promise me you'll let it rot." She did promise, and she meant it. But the dead don't get to dictate the living forever. The book was still on her lap, its spine cracked wide like a rib cage. Her thumb skimmed over the last margin note. The ink shimmered faintly. Not dried, not old, wet enough to smudge. Her breath caught in her throat. She touched it again. Smear, confirmed. The handwriting was identical, her mother's shaky script, letters curling inward like secrets curling tighter. But one margin, near the center of the book, had a date, the 12th of June, last month. A note scrawled beside it read, "He took the key. Don't trust the quiet. Trust the box." Her heart snagged on the word box. She remembered it. Dusty gray, wrapped in twine, hidden beneath moth-eaten quilts in the attic's darkest corner. Her mother's hands had trembled when she'd hidden it. She thought it was grief back then. Or drugs. But now. She stared at the ink, the wetness, The wrongness. Outside, wind rattled the back gate. Inside, the clock ticked like a heartbeat too fast. Too loud. She flipped another page. The note was clearer this time. The receipt's not. His mistake, it's your clue. She snatched the torn paper from where it had been tucked in the back. The receipt was stained with what looked like tea. Its ink faded. She turned it over. Again, that hand-drawn map, but this time she noticed a small R scrawled into the margin, not random. The same R her mother used to label recipe cards. But why would she use that now? She moved through the house like it might explode beneath her, slow, precise, silent. The attic door waited like a secret she already regretted remembering. She stared at the rope pull and felt that same childhood fear that something would answer if she touched it. She pulled it anyway. The ladder creaked open. She climbed out. The attic was a cathedral of dust and forgotten smells. Cedar, mildew, something coppery. Light slipped through the slats like guilt. Everything was as she remembered. The rusted tricycle, the mannequin torso her mother used to pin patterns on, the trunk with broken hinges. And in the far corner, beneath the old wool blankets, nothing. No box. Only a square imprint in the dust. A memory-shaped absence. And next to it, a footprint, still damp. Still forming. She wasn't alone. The floor whispered behind her. She spun. Book clutched like a weapon. But the attic was still. Too still. The kind of still that pretends. Then she saw it, just barely a sliver of fabric caught on a nail by the window. Black wool. The same coat the stranger had worn at the funeral. He had been here, recently, minutes ago. She dropped to her knees and ran her hands across the floorboards. Cold. Her fingers found something, a nail slightly raised. She tugged it free and pried up the board. Beneath, a velvet pouch, small, tied with red string. She opened it. Inside, a USB drive. She turned it over once, twice. There was no label. Only a scratch dot in R. Her mother had left something behind. And he came back for it. Downstairs, the back door creaked again. She froze. Didn't breathe. Then nothing. Her hand trembled around the USB. It felt electric. Hot, like it knew what it carried. She climbed down slow, holding the drive like a fuse. Every step a countdown. She slid into the kitchen and jammed the USB into her old laptop. The screen flickered. A folder opened. A single file. Titled, Adira, for when you doubt. She clicked. It was a video. Her mother. Pale, hollowed, but alert. More than she'd been in months. Her eyes were sharp. Afraid. If you're watching this, he's gotten too close, her mother said. You know by now what he's done. What he's capable of. Adira's stomach clenched. Her mother looked off screen, then leaned in. I didn't go mad. They needed you to think that. He's good at rewriting stories. Then a pause. Then, I kept the truth in the box. But he always knew how to find what I hid. The screen went black, but the video had a timestamp. Last edited 5 days ago. Her pulse spiked. The dead don't film. New messages. She ripped the drive out. Her mother's handwriting. The fresh ink. The smudged margin. The man at the funeral. The footprint in the attic. She'd buried her mother 3 years ago, but someone hadn't let her rest. A whisper surfaced in her memory, her mother's voice. Faint, drugged. He won't let go. Not of me. Not of you. Who was he? Why was he watching her now? She thought of the old family photos, the ones her mother always kept hidden. And suddenly she remembered something that had always struck her as odd. One photo where her mother stood stiff next to a man with a hand on her shoulder, fingers dug in too tight. His face always turned slightly away, just enough to blur. He looked like the man from the funeral, only younger. Could it have been him? But the photo hid something worse. Behind them in that picture, on the far shelf, was the same box. Even then, he Had known her mother long before she was born, and maybe he hadn't just known her. Maybe he had owned her. She blinked hard. The weight of years collapsed around her like a trapdoor. What if her mother hadn't been protecting the box? From Adira. But Adira from what the box might unleash. And now it was gone. The stranger had taken it. She stood in the hallway, hands empty, vision spinning. The book lay open on the floor where she dropped it. The last page fluttered in the breeze. A fresh note had been added. The attic was a test. You passed. Now listen. You were never the secret. You were the threat. Her knees buckled. She looked toward the front window, hoping for a sign, anything. Even the umbrella again. But he was gone. And so was the box dot, if justice still matters. You'll want the next page. The only thing left behind was the faint smell of cedar. And the soft impression of his coat on the chair. Still warm. Truth whispers in the spaces we refuse to read. You were 7. You came home early from school. The bus driver said nothing when you didn't wait for your stop. You walked 2 miles and stepped into the house barefoot, shoes dangling from your fingers like bait. The kitchen smelled of burnt sugar. Your mother stood by the sink, blouse damp, red spreading slow like watercolor. She didn't turn around. You asked if she was okay. She smiled at the wall and said, "Go play upstairs, baby." And you did. You forgot the blood, but the margins didn't. Now the book lay sprawled open on the bed. The room still smelled like cedar and static. She sat cross-legged, the spine splitting wider each time she flipped a page, as if the truth itself wanted out. Notes littered the edges like scars. Some screamed in capital letters. Some begged in slanted cursive. One was circled over and over until the paper thinned. Do you remember what you saw? She didn't. Not fully, but pieces were beginning to seep through, slow and sticky. The notes had changed. No longer warnings, now they felt like a conversation. Some margin comments ended with M, some with H. She hadn't noticed it before. She didn't know who H was, yet the handwriting was the same dot, the same hand pretending 2 voices. That unsettled her more than any threat could. She went back to the beginning, flipping slow this time. A flower pressed into page 3 crumbled. Beneath her thumb, Lily of the Valley, her mother's favorite. She remembered her saying, "They're beautiful but toxic. Like some people." She hadn't understood it then. She did now. The first real clue was tucked between lines of a poem. Her mother never finished. He brings coffee at dusk, silence at dawn, but never the truth. Never the cost. Next to it, H lied, "I bled, you saw." She touched the words, closed her eyes, waited for memory to open like a bruise dot it did. You woke once to muffled crying. Not yours. Hers dot she was sitting in the bathtub, fully dressed. Water running cold. She'd whispered a name over and over. Not your father's. Something about that name never left your skin. You open your eyes. The next margin had 3 words, etched as though stabbed into the pulp. He kept recordings. Her throat went dry. She scrambled off the bed, grabbed the book by its spine, and ran downstairs. The house felt too full, too watched. She turned on the radio static. Then faint music, piano. Her mother used to hum this song while folding laundry. The echo of it ached. She moved to the living room. Her mother's old record cabinet stood like a tomb, mahogany, brass-handled, dust-veiled. She hadn't opened it in years. She knelt. One by one, she slid the records out. Ella Fitzgerald. Johnny. Cash, S-A-D-E. And behind them, an envelope, manila, cracked open. Inside, 3 cassette tapes, labeled March 11th, Confession April 7th, Proof May 20th. If she finds this, she didn't have a player. But she knew where to find one. Her childhood bedroom. She hadn't gone in since the fire damage was repaired. But the stereo plastic pink with butterfly stickers and a cassette slot might still work. She doubted it, hoped it didn't. She climbed the stairs. The door creaked open. Her old life still sat there, frozen. Stuffed animals, posters, a cracked nightlight. The stereo waited. She slid in the first tape, pressed play. Nothing. Then a click. Then her mother's voice. I can't say this out loud, not to anyone, not to her, not yet. Silence. He was never supposed to come back. He made me promise. But promises don't hold up against fear, do they? Static. I kept her safe, I did. But she saw what he did to me. She just doesn't remember. Then, if she ever finds this, tell her it wasn't her fault. The tape whirred to an end. She sat in the dark. Tape still spinning. Breathing like she'd run a mile through cold rain. Then she put in the second. Different voice this time. Male. Calm, precise. If you're listening to this, it means she couldn't stop digging. I told her it would ruin her. His voice cracked. I didn't mean for any of this. I wanted something of my own. That's all I ever wanted. His breath hitched. I loved them both, but love isn't enough. It never was. The tape stopped mid-sentence. She didn't play the third one. Not yet. But the photo hid something worse. The one in the hallway. Her and her mother in the backyard. She'd never looked closely before. But now behind them, half-shadowed in the reflection of the window, stood a man. Same coat. Same build. His face was pressed to the glass. Expression unreadable. She ran her finger down the side of the frame. The glass was cracked, slightly, as if someone had tried to remove the photo. Or leave a mark. She pulled it from the wall, on the back. Scrawled in permanent marker. The chapter with your name in isn't fiction. Her knees weakened. She dropped the frame. It shattered. She didn't notice the blood at first, just a sting in her palm. Then warmth. Thin line, like the one on her mother's blouse. Just a little. Just enough. She looked down at the book still. In her lap, she hadn't finished it. Hadn't even read past the halfway point. She opened it again. The pages flipped like they wanted to find their own place. And they did. Chapter 17. The title, Adira. She froze. She hadn't read the chapter with her name in it yet. Secrets don't die. They hide. Her mother's desk had always been more of a shrine than furniture. Glossed with polish, lined with doilies, ringed with coffee stains only visible when light hit at the right angle. Adira used to run her fingers along the edges when she was little, trailing them through imagined dust like it was the edge of a cliff. After the attic revealed nothing but cold prints and a missing box, the house had gone breathless again, as if it were waiting, as if something beneath the floorboards had drawn its next breath and held it. She stood before the desk now. 3 drawers opened with ease paper clips, old receipts, a broken bracelet clasp, fragments of life that meant nothing. But the 4th drawer bottom left had always been a mystery. It never opened. Her mother used to place her palm flat against it sometimes, like she was listening for something inside. Adira had asked once, and her mother just said, "Some things are safest when they stay unanswered." The lock was small, brass, scratched, and screaming with silence. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the ring of forgotten keys she'd taken from her mother's sewing box 3 nights after the funeral, when she couldn't sleep and needed to touch something that still smelled like her. The 4th key, dull silver, shaped like a question mark, fit. The drawer opened with a reluctant groan. Inside, a stack of Polaroids, a folded paper napkin, a tape recorder, and a letter. Everything smelled faintly of cigarette smoke, cinnamon gum, and fear. She lifted the letter first. The paper was thick, cream-colored. Her mother's handwriting in black ink, curled and tight like it was afraid of being read. "If you're reading this, you already crossed the line. Again, I told you I wouldn't protect you next time. But you always counted on my guilt. That was your real weapon. You never hit me, but you bruised everything else." The ink blurred in places, not from water, from fingers, from rereading. Regret, The next line struck harder. She knows pieces. Now you always said she was too soft. But softness isn't weakness. You forgot that. You forgot how much of me lives in her. No sign off. No farewell. Just the first letter of her name, cut off mid-curve. She set it aside. The napkin was from a roadside diner 3 towns over Ruby's Stop and Eat, scribbled in red ink. The date on the back matched the receipt from the book's spine. Her mother had been there, maybe with him, maybe warning him. Or warning herself. She picked up the Polaroids. There were 5. The first, her mother and the man in the coat, seated in a car, heads tilted toward each other, not affection, but negotiation. Tension bent their bodies. The second, her mother alone. Eyes swollen, holding something wrapped in a towel. Adira couldn't make out what it was. The third, a photo of her, sleeping, age unknown, maybe 7. The edges of her bed frame in view. Someone had taken this from the doorway. She had no memory of it. The fourth, a close-up of that same towel bundle. Now open. Inside it something sharp. A knife. The fifth, a photo of the man, standing in the corner of a room, looking directly at the camera. No smile. Someone had written on the back, "You see him, but he sees through you." She dropped the photos. The voice in the margins had never been just her mother's. She picked up the recorder. It was small, black, the kind they used in interviews or interrogations. 1 button. Play. She pressed it. Static. Then a breath. Then a voice. Male. "You want a confession?" "Fine." She froze. I told her I'd stop. I meant it that time. But promises buckle when you carry them long enough. She was slipping, and I thought if I could just keep her still she wouldn't leave. A pause. No music. Just wind against the mic. She didn't understand. None of them do. The silence I carry. The itch under my skin. It's not cruelty. It's compulsion. It's hunger. Another pause. I didn't mean for her to bleed. Her hand trembled around the recorder. She looked at me different after that. Like she saw what I really was. And still she stayed. She thought she could love it out of me. But love doesn't scrape the bones clean. It just teaches you how to bleed prettier. The tape clicked off. No name. But she knew. She remembered the first time she ever heard that voice. She was 6. He came to the house when her mother said he wouldn't. He gave her a red balloon and called her kiddo. And later, her mother cried into the sink, running water to drown the sound. He had never left. Not really. Just retreated behind walls and whispers. But the photo hid something worse. The fourth one. She picked it up again. The knife, the towel, the same embroidered pattern. From their old kitchen table. The one they got rid of after the incident her mother said was a burn. But there was no scorch mark, just a slice. And now, a timeline. The man. The drawer. The book. It was all leading somewhere. She looked back at the letter. Read the words. Again. You forgot how much of me lives in her. She folded it carefully, like it was holy. Tucked it into her coat. She reached for the recorder again. This time, she pressed rewind. Because there was something else under that man's voice. A second track. Barely audible, a soft sound. Like a breath caught between words. And under that her mother. Humming. The lullaby from the nightlight. The one Adira hadn't heard in years. Layered beneath his confession. A secret duet. If justice still matters. You'll want the next page. She didn't know what hurt worse, knowing he had taken so much from them. Or realizing how much of her had been shaped by what he left behind. The voice on the recorder wasn't her mother's, it was a man's. Photographs framed the truth, but never the whole of it. She remembered sitting on her mother's lap, camera flash still buzzing in her ears, her mother whispering, "Smile, baby. Don't let them see the tired." She hadn't known then what the tired meant, but it had weight. She could feel it. Now in the curl of her spine, in the ache behind her eyes as she held the Polaroids under the kitchen light. They'd been hidden in the locked drawer. 5 of them, all truth-shaped, all jagged. The third photo haunted her most, the one of them. Baby. It wasn't her. The room was familiar. Worn wallpaper, a chipped dresser, the same crooked lamp her mother kept beside the bed for 20 years. But the baby in her mother's arms wore a different birthmark. Right cheek, crescent-shaped, like a faded moon. Adira didn't have a birthmark, and her mother never mentioned another child. She turned the photo over. Date, April 3rd, no year, a single initial written beneath it. S. The baby looked like her. That was the worst part. Just enough to make her stomach twist. Her mother's eyes, her own mouth. But not her. The other Polaroids felt different now. Not just documentation. They were arrangements, puzzles, warnings. Written in silence. In one, her mother stood with a bruise darkening under her collarbone, half covered by a scarf. Her hand cradled the same baby, and her eyes stared straight at the lens, wide, watchful, unblinking. Another showed her mother, hiding something behind her back. You couldn't see what. Just the way her fingers tightened, pale and sharp, like claws curling over glass. She lined the Polaroids on the table, straight edges aligned. But they didn't connect. Until the knock came, 3 taps. Then one more. She knew before she opened the door that this moment would unravel everything. The woman standing there couldn't have been older than 30. Hair tied back. A tired softness in her face, like someone who'd been waiting her whole life to be believed. She wore a raincoat, even though the sky was clear, and her hands clutched a book wrapped in a torn grocery bag. The same book, Adira's. Mouth went dry. The woman offered a brittle smile. I didn't know if you'd be here. Who are you? Adira asked, voice too flat, too low. The woman hesitated. Sira. Adira stared. I think we share the same mother. Sira added. The silence between them was wide enough to drown in. She said you'd be scared, Sira continued, softer now. She said you'd fight it. I did too when I first found the notes. Adira stepped back without realizing it. Her hand brushed the edge of the table. One of the Polaroids slipped to the floor. Sira bent to pick it up, froze. I have this one, she whispered. Adira didn't speak. I remember that day, she cried after. Sighed. She was sending me away to keep me safe. I didn't understand. But I remember the bruise. But the photo hid something worse. The background. Adira picked it up again, heart ticking louder. Behind their mother, in the reflection of the hallway mirror, a shadow. Male figure. Partially turned, same coat. Same stance. He was there that day. 2. Sira reached into her coat pocket, pulled out a small envelope, stained and bent at the corners. Inside was a note. Her mother's handwriting again. Give this to A if she remembers. If she still hears me. The paper trembled in Adira's hands. The ink was faded but legible. If you're both reading this, then the house failed to keep you apart. I tried. I failed. But blood finds blood. Sira took a step forward, her voice barely audible. I didn't know your name until last year. She told me not to ask questions, not to look. Adira's throat tightened. Why now? She died a year ago. Not 3. Everything in Adira's chest pulled sharp and strange. What? Sira looked away. I don't know what they buried. I don't think it was her. I think she ran or hid until she couldn't anymore. She handed over the book. Same notes, same code. Different chapters. Adira opened to the first page. The margin swam. Your story starts later, but ends the same. You are the thread that holds what I had to cut. Beneath it, a tiny pressed petal. Lily of the Valley. Again, I don't think she was just protecting us from him, Sarah whispered. I think she was protecting him from us. The words sat wrong in Adira's ears, like they were missing their teeth. What do you mean? She said we were too much of her, Sira answered. Too sharp, too loud. She said we'd become what she ran from. Adira's fingers curled around the table edge. Her own breath turned shallow. She used to say, Sira continued, that daughters are where secrets go to watch themselves die. Outside, the wind picked up. Inside, the Polaroid shifted slightly on the table, as if reacting. Adira looked down at them. Again, the photos that had once been warnings now looked like confessions. Or farewells. Or proof. If justice still matters, you'll want the next page. You're not crazy, Sira said gently, one hand brushing the edge of the book like she needed to be sure it was real. She sent me too. It's never the words that scream, it's the ones they erased. The first time she learned paper could bleed was when she cut herself on a photo corner at 8. It left a slice thinner than grief, deep enough to remind her that memory had teeth. Now, seated on the floor with both books laid open between them, hers and Sarah's, Adira realized something uglier. Paper could lie. They flipped in silence. Each margin, each scrawled warning, each underlined phrase compared like puzzle pieces. From two tragedies stitched together, the handwriting matched. The notes mirrored. Until they didn, single quotes T.12 pages missing, not torn from where, not dog-eared or frayed. Torn with purpose, surgically removed from both books, same sections. Same numbered pages. What was here? Adira whispered. Sira didn't answer. She just kept running her fingers over the torn binding, her breath catching like memories snagging on barbed wire. Adira picked up the recorder again, the one from the drawer. She rewound. The second tape, fingers colder than the wind, pressing against the window. Click. Static. Then the voice. I only agreed because of Cal. Without him, none of this works. Sira looked up. Did he say Cal? Adira nodded. I've heard that name, Sira said slowly. Mom whispered it when she thought I was sleeping. Always in fear, like saying it too loud would bring him in. Adira pressed pause. You think it's a first name? I don't know, Sira said. Could be short for something, or code, but she hated it. You could feel it in her body. Whenever she said it, her shoulders folded like they wanted to disappear. They listened again. He's not like me. He doesn't do this for power. He does it to clean things, to keep the line unbroken. Our job was never to fix, it was to silence. The tape clicked off, but the photo hid something worse. Sira reached into her bag and slid a photo across the floor. Not a Polaroid this time, an old glossy print. Their mother in a hospital bed, hooked to a drip, smiling, but not for the camera. For the man seated beside her. He looked wrong, not evil. Not cruel, kind, too kind, like someone wearing someone else's skin. On the back of the photo, written in tight, almost reluctant ink, Cal 9/14, Hospice Day 2. They didn't say anything for a long time. Then Sira whispered, he's not in any medical records. I checked. No staff named Cal at that hospice. No temporary contractors. Nothing. Adira picked up her phone. Pulled up the old hospice website. Nothing current. She scrolled deeper. Archive team photos. There. A man in the corner. No name tag. Half shadowed. Her heart jolted. Same face. Same eyes. Same coat. But his hair was darker. Less gray. Still, the air around him hadn't changed. It pressed inward. Like gravity folded where he stood. She clicked the image. Zoomed. And there it was. A familiar scar above his left brow. Curved like a question mark. The same one from the blurred funeral photo. From the reflection in the hallway mirror, Adira stood. We need someone who knew her. From those days, from the end. Sira nodded slowly. There was a nurse. Mom called her Mina, said she was the only one who didn't flinch. They found her through a hospice alumni page, Mina Alvarez. Retired. Still in the area. Sira made the call. Adira listened. Mina picked up after the third ring. Quiet voice, wary, but when Sira said their mother's name, the voice cracked. She warned me if you ever called, I should tell you nothing, Mina said. But she also left something. For both of you, a sealed envelope. I never opened it. Can we meet? Sira asked. Pause. Then. Tomorrow, early, at my church. 10 sharp. I don't do phones after dark. They agreed. The next morning, the pews were empty. And so was the parking lot. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. No Mina. They asked the janitor. There's no Mina here, he said. But she said, Adira started. Never heard of her. You sure? This is the right place? They showed him her photo. The janitor's face changed. Not confused, uneasy. She came by once, he said. Last week. Asked if she could leave something in the choir room safe. Did she? Sira asked. He nodded. Didn't say what it was. He led them down a side hall, unlocked a small supply closet. Inside, a safe. Old. Stiff hinged. He stepped aside. Whatever this is, it's yours now. They opened it. Inside, a single cassette, wrapped in cloth. And a key. Long bronze, labeled Cedar House. Sira picked up the tape. It had one word scratched in sharp ink. Run. They played it that night. It wasn't their mother. It was Mina. Her voice trembled. If you're hearing this, it means I didn't make it. Or I ran again. I've done both before. A pause. Then, there was an agreement. Between them, H and Cal. One cleaned the past. The other rewrote it. Your mother. She tried to cut herself out of it. But some stories don't forgive exits. Another. Breath. I saw what he did. Not with fists, with presence. With precision. He made her doubt herself. Made me doubt. That's worse than harm. That's erasure. A second pause, longer. She left more behind than you know. But if you diggy, we'll feel it. And he doesn't lose things quietly. The tape stopped. If justice still matters, you'll want the next page. They sat in silence, the recorder still whirring. Then a voice, not the tape. Outside. Beneath the window. Low. Mail. You girls shouldn't be digging. He's still out there. Some houses remember more than we do. She hadn't stood on the porch of her childhood home since the day after the fire. The railing still bore the char of heat, though someone had painted over it. Badly. The same faded wind chime spun weakly in the breeze, tangled, off-key but trying. Just like the rest of this place. Sira stood beside her, arms folded tight, coat zipped even though the morning wasn't cold. Her eyes kept darting to the basement windows, half buried in dirt and spidered with cracks. We don't have to go in, Adira said, but she already had the key out. The front door groaned open, as if surprised to see them. Inside, the air was still and wrong, not dusty scrubbed. Too clean. The way hospitals feel after something dies in them. The smell of bleach where memory should have lived. They moved together, quietly, like girls tiptoeing past something asleep. Each step groaned. Like a warning. Downstairs, the basement door was still nailed shut. Her mother had done that herself after the incident with the leak. She said it was for mold. But Adira remembered the hammer in her hand shaking. The way she kept whispering, "Don't go down there. It's not a place for little feet." She pulled the nails free one by one. The sound echoed, metal against wood, ghost against bone. They flicked on the basement light. It didn't work. Flashlights. Then, the stairs sighed under their weight. Each creak timed like a clock counting backward. At the bottom, the air grew colder, denser, like silence had settled into the walls. Sira swept her beam left. There, a loose board. Just one. Slightly lifted at the edge. Almost thoughtful. Like it had been waiting for permission to be pulled. Adira knelt, fingers numb, and pried it free. Then the one beside it. And the one after that. She reached down into the hollow. Her hand brushed leather first soft, rotted, a child's shoe. Tiny, faded pink, the kind with bunny ears stitched at the toe. She pulled it out with shaking hands. Sierra covered her mouth. Adira reached in again. Her fingers struck something hard. Then another, then a clatter of bone against wood. She didn't speak. She just sat there, holding the shoe, while her stomach turned to frost. But the photo hid something worse. The old one, with the birthday cake, 5 candles, but only one child in the frame. And now she remembered how her mother's smile looked pasted on, how her hand rested flat on the table, not on Adira's shoulder, a hand meant for someone who wasn't there. They called the police. They said the right words, found the bones, bagged them like evidence. But something changed in the room after the detective arrived. He asked the wrong questions. Too few of them. Took fewer notes. They watched one of the officers pocket something, a scrap of fabric, the same color as the shoe. Sierra tried to speak up. They ignored her. They said they'd call with updates. They never did. 2 days later, the file was marked as unconfirmed historical remains. No next of kin. No further investigation. Buried, again. Adira sat on the floor of her old room, holding the shoe in a Ziploc bag. This was a person, she whispered. Sierra stood at the window, watching a black car idle across the street. He's watching, Adira didn't ask who. She already knew. The man in the margins. The voice on the tapes. Cal, the one who cleaned. I think he wants us to stop, Sierra said. Because we're close, Adira answered. Or because we're wrong, Sierra said quietly. Adira looked up. You don't believe that? No, Sierra admitted. But I want to. Her voice cracked. I want her to be innocent. Adira stood, walked over, and opened the second drawer of her old dresser. The bottom stuck as it always had. Inside was the old music box, still broken, still playing only the first 3 notes when you wound it. She lifted it. A slip of paper was taped inside the lid. 1 word, forgive. A smudge of red beside it. Faded, fingerprint shaped. Maybe hers, maybe not. If justice still matters, you'll want the next page. They didn't sleep that night. The shoe stayed between them on the table, lit by the weak lamp with the cracked shade. We're digging up things meant to stay dead, her sister whispered. A lie told gently still shatters. He'd tied her shoes every morning for years. The double knots, the way he always tugged twice. Her childhood memory looped it like a lullaby. She thought love lived in those motions. But now that the envelope lay open in her lap, her hands couldn't stop shaking. The DNA results were clean, no errors, no uncertainty. The man she called Dad was not her father. She read the page again. The sentence that bent her spine inward. Biological paternity, not detected. Sierra sat across from her, cross-legged on the carpet, their mother's book between them like an offering too hot to touch. She didn't say anything. Didn't need to, because Adira already knew the name that would follow. The name that haunted tapes, margins, dreams. Cal. The man who showed up at funerals, who whispered warnings through strangers, who lingered in photos like a smudge you couldn't wipe clean. He wasn't a ghost. He was her blood. And her mother knew, and said nothing. But the photo hid something worse. A faded image of their mother, pregnant, bare feet in the garden, a pale sundress. She looked almost happy except for her eyes. They stared past the camera, jaw clenched like she was bracing for something that never stopped coming. Sierra turned the book toward her. A note had surfaced, one neither of them had seen before, stuck to the back of an old folded page. A line in her mother's handwriting, jagged. They told me she was sick, but it wasn't sickness. It was knowing. Adira. Read it 3 times. I always thought I was the weak one, she said quietly. The one who needed fixing. You weren't, Sierra said. You just remembered. They'd found the clinic's name on an old hospital form tucked behind the last photo in the box. Cypress Behavioral Program, internal referral only. Private, off books, no website, but they had an address an hour north. The drive passed in silence, except for the music box in Sarah's lap. She wound it once before they left 3 notes, then static. Their childhood lullaby stuck in rewind. The clinic sat behind a gate, overgrown with ivy. The building was white but peeling, windows too narrow, smiles too forced. A receptionist in pale pink scrubs blinked at them as if from a dream she didn't want to wake from. "We're looking for records," Adira said. "From the early 2000s, my mother brought me here." Her name was Margaret Vale. The woman typed slowly, then frowned. "We don't release patient records to family. Especially not from the vault files." Sarah leaned in. "What if the patient never consented to be one?" The woman's mouth opened, then closed. "We have a lawyer," Adira added, lying. That cracked it. The woman handed over a form. "Wait in the side room. If anything turns up, I'll print what I can." They sat on the vinyl chairs, back straight, hands still. On the wall hung a portrait of the founder, a man in a charcoal coat, older now, gray at the temples, but unmistakable. Cal. There was a plaque beneath the photo. Dr. Calvin R. Holloway, founder and clinical strategist. Sarah's lips parted. He was never just a visitor. "He ran the program," Adira whispered. "And he ran her." 30 minutes passed. Then the receptionist returned with a single manila envelope. Her hands trembled. "I shouldn't be giving you this," she whispered. "But I remember her. Your mother." She was scared, but not of the building. Of what they'd make her say. Inside the envelope was a file, thin. Most of the pages had been redacted or removed, but one form remained intact. Patient name: Adira M. Vale. Diagnosis: behavioral dissociation, memory fragmentation. Recommendation: containment, moderate exposure. Protocol: guardian consent. C.R. Holloway. "I was a patient," Adira said, voice distant. Sarah stared at the page. They framed it like care, but it was control. A second sheet listed a treatment protocol: environmental isolation, hypnotherapy, chemical memory blocks. "No wonder you can't remember things," Sarah said. "It wasn't you. It was him." Adira ran her thumb over the signature line. Cal's handwriting was tight, upright, too precise. Like someone who feared being misunderstood but never questioned his own power. Her mind burned with old Flash's cold tiles, the hum of fluorescence. Someone saying, "She doesn't respond well to names, only to repetition." She thought it had been a dream, but dreams didn't file paperwork. "I'm not broken," she whispered. "No," Sarah said. "But he wanted you to think you were." The receptionist glanced down the hallway, then leaned in. "He still checks in, every quarter. No title now, but they listen when he speaks." Adira closed the folder. "This was never about helping," she said. "It was about hiding." The woman looked away. "He helped a lot of girls, especially the ones no one missed." They left without speaking. Back at the motel, the air felt too thin. Adira sat by the window, watching the motel sign flicker. Sarah placed something beside her. The envelope from the clinic. Then, softer. "Do you remember the scar behind your ear?" Adira nodded. "I asked Mom once. She said I fell." "She told me it was a chip," Sarah said. "I thought she was paranoid." Adira pressed her fingers behind her ear. It still felt wrong. Numb. Not broken. Altered. She thought of all the times she forgot things too easily. Her 7th birthday. The face of her first teacher. What her mother screamed that night before the silence set in. Sarah leaned closer, voice shaking. "You were never sick," she said. "They made you forget. Sometimes love leaves blood behind." The tea was always warm. Cal liked it that way. She made sure of it. Never too hot, never too cold. Just enough honey to cover the taste. He'd sit in the corner chair, one with the unraveling arm, and sip while she smiled at the floor dot. It started small, a trace in the spoon. The kind of thing a mother adds to her own silence. Arsenic is slow. It needs patience. She had plenty. Adira didn't remember those evenings exactly, only the way her mother looked afterward, shaky, like she'd emptied herself of something unspeakable. She thought it was grief. Or guilt. She didn't know it was justice in disguise. Now, seated at the motel desk with the book open before her, the lamp casting a soft, accusing glow, Adira turned the pages one by one. The margins bled. He asked if I loved him. I said yes. He asked why I flinched. I said I was cold. He asked if I'd ever leave. I said I already had. Sierra sat on the bed, holding an ice pack to her ribs. The break-in was fast silent. They hadn't seen the face, just the shadow, just the voice. You shouldn't have the book. Adira found the spot where the handwriting changed, tighter, sharper. The poison had started here. Every note from then on had a weight to it. A countdown, 1/3 TSP in the morning. 1/2 by week 3. Look him in the eye. Smile. Stir slow. Read it aloud. Sierra flinched. You think she did it for us? Sierra asked, voice cracked and distant. Adira didn't answer, because the truth didn't come wrapped in a bow. It came in bones under floorboards, in erased clinic files, in the slow, untraceable rot of a man who built programs to unmake girls and called it help. She turned another page. He said I couldn't kill what made me. But I wasn't killing him. I was freeing you. The room shifted. The air thickened. The motel walls closed in like a second skin. She thought of Cal's voice on the tape, steady, clean, unaffected. He didn't sound afraid, because he never believed he could be. Outplayed. But the photo hid something worse. The one Adira found wedged behind the bathroom mirror, after the break-in, torn at the corner. It showed her mother beside a hospital bed. Cal was lying in it, pale, smiling. She wrote on the back in blue pen, no autopsy. That was the deal. Let me bury him quietly, or he takes the girl with him. Not girls, girl, singular. Back then, she thought Sierra was gone, dead, maybe. That was how deep the lie ran. Sierra exhaled sharply. I think someone's helping him. He's dead. Sierra shook her head. Maybe, but someone's keeping him alive in paper, in tape, in fear. The window was cracked an inch. Just enough for the breeze to slip in. Just enough for someone to listen. Adira picked up the book again. Ran her fingers along the back cover. There was something taped beneath the binding. A folded page. Thicker. Final. Her name at the top. Adira, I need you to know what I did wasn't about revenge. It was a release. Not from him. From myself. You were always going to remember. That's what scared him most. Not your pain, your recall. You were never the soft one. That was the lie. You were me, but better. Adira's eyes burned. She blinked hard, but the tears didn't fall. They just clung. Below the writing, a series of numbers. Coordinates. Latitude, longitude. Handwritten, shaky. Location. The same spot where Cal's death certificate listed his burial. A private plot. No records. No headstone. Sierra spoke again. Softer this time. I think the break-in wasn't about hurting us. Not yet. Then what? They were looking for this. Adira nodded, fingers curling around the book, the symbolic object. The witness that can't forget. If justice still matters, you'll want the next page. Another knock at the door. Neither of them moved. Adira slid the note into her coat pocket. And turned the final page. The last note in the book was addressed to her by name. Justice whispered isn't justice at all. The first time her mother reported him, the file was lost in transfer. The second time, the complaint was incomplete. The third, she stopped reporting. Silence had teeth and paper, and men in rooms who said they couldn't act without. More bruises, more proof, more suffering. Adira stood in front of a courthouse with no case to file and a story too true to touch. Sira beside her, bruised but upright. The book clutched in her hands, spine nearly split from the weight it carried. She'd printed copies, sent them to papers, podcasts, forums, the inboxes of women's rights groups, local stations, crime blogs, not one response. Except one, from a legal assistant who apologized for the difficult emotional experience and offered a hotline instead. That a podcaster's small following, raw voice wrote back. The subject line said only, "Let's burn it down." She met them in a diner. Rain slapped the windows while the waitress poured bitter coffee and looked away when Adira spoke. She brought the book, the photos, the tapes, played Cal's voice, showed the cassette labeled Run. The podcaster didn't flinch. Just hit record. The episode aired 3 nights later. They called it The House That Ate Its Daughters. It opened with Sira's whisper. He wasn't just a man. He was a system. The views crawled in at first, then surged. A wave of disbelief, then fury, then silence again until the silence broke. But the photo hid something worse. One listener posted an image, an old program brochure from Cyprus. Different year, different name, same logo. A new comment appeared beneath it every 5 minutes. Then came the messages. I had the dream too, the one with the door I couldn't open. He kept calling me a duplicate, like I was replaceable. My book has red ink only, no black. What does that mean? It wasn't just 2 sisters. It was dozens. The podcast went viral. Reporters asked for interviews, then backed off. The police reopened the case, briefly. Then closed it again. Evidence inconclusive. Chain of custody compromised. The girl in the basement? Unidentifiable remains, historical. Their mother? No forensic record of foul play. Presumed natural causes. Cal, still dead. But his foundation now listed under review. A euphemism for survival. Adira didn't scream. Screaming hadn't saved her mother. Instead, she made a website. Uploaded everything: scans, photos, full audio tapes. She named it the Court of No Name. No ads. No contact form. Just an open archive and a message. If you're reading this, it's because someone tried to keep it from you. More names followed. A girl from Maine, one from Texas, a woman in Prov. All had books. Some had scars in the same place, behind the left ear, just under the hairline. They weren't crazy. They weren't alone. Adira slept with her boots on now. The break-in had changed her, or maybe just revealed her. The truth didn't make her safer, just sharper. Sira's ribs healed. Her voice didn't, but she found a way to speak. She started writing. A story called Soft Monsters. She dedicated it to no one, but Adira knew. They spoke less but trusted more. One night Adira pulled out the final note again. Her name at the top. Her mother's final words beneath. They will never believe what we buried, but they will believe what you survive. The book stayed open beside her bed, spine torn, margins smudged, pages curling like tired hands. It had become more than story, more than proof. It was a record. An artifact of the erased. And still, people knocked. Sometimes for help. Sometimes to silence her. She didn't flinch. Not anymore. She remembered the music box in her pocket. Still broken. Still playing only 3 notes. The same notes in the background of a new message she'd received an hour earlier. A voice filtered through static. Female. Young. He said I was the only one. I'm not, am I? She texted back one word. No. If justice still matters, you'll want the next page. She refreshed the inbox again. Another DM. And another. And another. There are more of us, the DMs read. He heard all of us. Proof doesn't burn it, waits. Her mother once said, "The ugliest truths are the ones whispered over porcelain teacups balanced like lies in a trembling grip." She remembered her hands always trembling. Not from fear, from restraint. Now Adira stood in the vault of the old regional bank. Box 241B unlocked and opened, her breath clouding the silence. Sira beside her, shoulders squared like armor. The metal lid scraped back. Inside, a velvet pouch, 2 cassette tapes, and a folded note yellowed with time. The weight of it made her palms sweat. The note was short. "If this reaches you, it means I lost the rest. But not everything. This is what they couldn't bleach." The tapes were labeled in red marker, no names. Just numbers, 7.9, 510.27, 06. She tucked them into her coat. The bank manager offered a thin smile. "You sure that's all?" She nodded. But the photo hid something worse. The one Sira found slipped into a gas bill envelope weeks earlier. A snapshot, grainy, printed on cheap photo paper. Adira walking home from work, alone, no date stamp. No sender, just one word printed across the bottom, quiet. Since the podcast went viral, quiet wasn't safety anymore. Quiet meant eyes. Quiet meant planning. They stayed at different motels now. Rotated phones. Bought cash groceries. She wore her hair tied different. Taped the scenes of her windows. Slept light. The civil suit was filed with no fanfare. Just paperwork and steel resolve. Names on paper meant doors that could no longer be locked from the inside. The firm she partnered with was young, scrappy, and half terrified. But their fear made them thorough. It wasn't a murder case. It was about institutional complicity. They named the foundation, the clinic, and 3 former board members. Not Calda, he was already buried legally, if not literally, but the systems he built still. Breathed. That was the real target. Her mother's voice played first, from the 9th of July, 05. Tape, unfiltered, shaken. He said the quiet ones are easier to keep. He said pain makes them obedient. He said they'll never believe you without a bruise. So, I bruised myself. The silence afterward made Sarah cry. The second tape was worse. Cal's voice. Cal in full. Margaret never knew how to stay inside the script. We rewrote her, but it didn't hold. The daughters, the second generation, they learn faster. Pause, then laughter, small, contained, like he knew he was being recorded and didn't care. Control isn't about locking doors, it's about making sure no one asks where they lead. The tapes were admissible. Barely. The judge requested voice authentication. It passed. But still, he ruled them limited in scope. Too emotional. Too circumstantial. Too much. They offered her a deal. 3 days later, $2 million. Confidentiality clause, retraction of public allegations, destruction of all materials. Sira said they should take it. Not because it was enough, because it was something. Adira held the pen, then set it down. "I don't want something," she said. "I want the whole of it." That night, someone followed her. She knew because of the cigarette smoke. Her father, the one who raised her, smoked that brand. The cheap kind that stank sweet. She hadn't smelled it in years. She ducked into an alley, waited. Nothing. No footsteps. No voice. But when she got back to the motel, the zipper of her duffel bag was open. Nothing missing. Just shifted, like someone needed her to know they'd been close enough to take anything. Sira taped the window shut twice after that. Double knotted. The curtains. Adira didn't sleep. She sat by the dresser with the book open beside her. The final page still scabbed over in smudged ink. They said pain would humble you. I hope instead it builds your fire. The next morning, she went back to the courthouse. Not for trial. For the press. She stood outside. No mic, no statement. Just a cardboard sign. He hurt girls. They hid it. An old woman took a photo. Then, a man in a hoodie. Then a child holding her mother's hand. By evening, It was trending. The firm begged her to delete her account. She didn't. She added a link to the court of no name. If justice still matters, you'll want the next page. More. DMIS flooded in. Books, tapes, stories. Photos of old clinics. Men in coats. Girls with stitched lips and locked drawers and branded silence. She kept going, through the death threats, the bribery, the podcasts that called her obsessed or unstable. She never wavered. She only whispered the truth until it got too loud to ignore. $2 million. A check she never cashed. They offered her $2 million to walk away. She said no. Sometimes the dead testify louder than the living. Before the hearing began, Adira stood alone in the hallway outside the courtroom, staring at the long crack in the tiled floor. It reminded her of the ones in her old bedroom. Ceiling hairline fractures that spidered slowly, quietly, until one day, the whole paint layer peeled back. She used to trace them with her finger like a secret map. Roots away from everything. Sierra sat on the bench beside her now, silent. The book between her hands. Their mother's handwriting, their mother's voice, their mother's war. Inside the courtroom, the air tasted like wood polish and worn fabric. No cameras, no press. Just a clerk, a judge, 3 attorneys, and too many ghosts. The prosecutor asked if she was ready. She nodded. Then walked to the stand. The bailiff swore her in. She didn't flinch when asked to raise her hand. She'd been raised by someone who taught her that silence is a fist in a prettier dress. She'd unlearned that. Now. They asked questions. She answered. But the tape did most of the talking. Her mother's voice played first. I stayed because he made me believe I was the chaos. I left because I realized the silence wasn't mine. The judge leaned in, eyes unreadable. Then came the second tape. Cal's voice, steady, cold, almost elegant. They call it programming. I call it refinement. You remove the noise. You teach them to forget. And if they don't forget, you bury them. A silence followed, heavier than any scream could have. Then. The courtroom held its breath. The defense objected. Unverified, emotionally manipulative, out of scope. The judge overruled. Adira slid the book forward. Pages 114 through 119 contain dates, names, floor plans of the clinics restricted. Wing, all written before the clinic was shut down. We matched the handwriting to multiple prescriptions and intake forms. The ink was tested. It predates any public knowledge of what was happening. And who wrote it? The judge asked. My mother. Another silence. This one held longer, but the photo hid something worse. It was Sierra who presented it. A picture of a rusted plaque unearthed from the basement wall of the old house, cypress seal, faded and chipped. A different name stamped beneath it. Annex Lab B, secondary study. Hold, the house had been more than a home. It had been a back door. A container. A place where certain girls were kept when they stopped fitting the study. When excavation began, they found more than rot. 3 additional skeletons. 2 juveniles. 1 marked female, no name. 1 set of remains matched dental records from a missing girl, reported in 1998. The court went still again, a slow unraveling. Then the messages began again. More women. More names. Stories that mirrored each other in shadowy symmetry. They taught me to count pills like rosary beads. They rewrote my diary pages and made me sign them. I still flinch when I see a red pen. The judge took the book home, called it evidence in literary form. The court adjourned that day without a verdict, but the next morning, the clinic was raided. Files removed. Locks changed. And finally closed. The same morning, Adira returned to the house. Not to mourn, to stand. On the ruin, the excavation crews were gone. Only the foundation remained. She crouched near the crawl space, the one where she used to hide her drawings. There, in the dirt, a small object caught the light. A lipstick tube. Familiar. Her mother's shade. Crimson, cap still on. She unscrewed it. Inside, a rolled scrap of paper. Single sentence. If they bury me with fire in my teeth. Behind her, a shadow stretched across the broken yard. She turned. It was him, the man from the funeral, older now. Paler, not hiding. Just tired. You followed us. She said. No, he replied. I waited. She didn't move. I was part of it once, he said. Not in the files, in the silence. I kept my mouth shut and watched your mother fight it alone. Why now? She asked. He stepped closer. Because now someone's listening. He looked down at the lipstick in her palm. I told her once that girls like you break. She told me no, we sharpen. He handed her a photo, a Polaroid. Their mother, holding baby Sira. Behind her, a mirror. In it, Adira, watching, small, silent, unforgotten. I told her to run, the man said. But she stayed, for you, for this. Adira's hands trembled, the weight of every lie, every tape, every margin. And yet, she was still standing, still, speaking, still here. He nodded once, then turned to go. She didn't stop him. He disappeared. Into the smoke of memory. If justice still matters, you'll want the next page. She looked back down at the book in her hands. The courtroom had heard it, but the world still hadn't. She would change that. She already was. Sira walked up behind her, touched her shoulder. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The wind picked up. Ash scattered across the foundation. Your mother saved us all, he'd said, but she needed you to finish it. Time doesn't heal, it teaches. She reads slow now, not because she didn't know the words, but because some of them still hurt. And hurt deserved space to breathe. The room was quiet except for her voice, low and steady, the kind of voice that knew how to hold silence without breaking it. The curtains breathed in and out with the late spring wind. The floor creaked beneath the weight of memory. And her daughter, 8 years old, legs tucked under her, eyes too old for her face, listened like the story might crack something open. The book between them was the same one, but not the same. The spine had been repaired 3 times. The cover reinforced with linen tape. The pages laminated at the edges, not to protect them from damage, but from being erased. New margins joined the old ones, some in her mother's handwriting, urgent, slanted, sometimes smeared, some in her own rounder, more careful. Letters pressed deep like she was anchoring truth to paper. She read aloud from page 147. He called silence discipline. I called it survival. Her daughter looked up. Was that you or her? Adira smiled faintly. Her, but it sounds like you. She nodded. We sounded alike in pain, but not in peace. Her daughter leaned against her shoulder, the smell of lavender in her hair, safety, proof that cycles could. And Adira had spent years breaking what tried to rebuild itself in her blood. She filed every suit, sat through every hearing, spoke for women who had no names left. Not just about Cal, but what came before, what came after. The way institutions absorb harm and rename it protocol. She didn't do it for closure. She never liked that word. It sounded too much like a door slamming shut. Her mother never got one. And even now, the wind still slipped through the cracks. But something had shifted. The house was gone. The court record was permanent. The clinic's assets liquidated. Used to fund shelters, therapy, scholarship funds. A different kind of ledger. And the book? It was housed in 2 archives, one at the university, one at a domestic violence center. Visitors weren't allowed to touch it, but they could listen to recordings. Scan pages. Read the margins, margins of girls, margins of mothers, margins of memory. But the photo hid something worse. The last image in the drawer. One she hadn't dared revisit in years. Her mother holding her as a baby, crying, not tears of joy, tears of apology. On the back, scribbled, I will raise her louder than I was allowed to be. Adira had kept that promise. Her daughter flipped a page and pointed. This one's in blue. Adira looked. A note written just last month. Her own handwriting. Pain taught me how to whisper. Love taught me how to speak. You taught me how to stay. They didn't need to talk about what it meant. Her daughter was quiet, then asked, "Did Grandma know I'd be here?" Adira thought about it. All of it. The notes. The poisons. The locked drawers. The photo behind the mirror. The lipstick in the dirt. She hoped, she said. But she didn't know? No, Adira whispered. But she waited. They sat like that for a long time. One mother, one daughter, one book between them. Margins filled with fire and thread. If justice still matters, you'll want the next page. Her daughter touched the cover. She waited, she said. So I wouldn't have to